Whoa, time for guest hosts. Whoa, it's time for guest hosts. Whoa, love the guest hosts. I just want a guest host. It's episode 11 of Guest Host Raw, the show where I review every episode of the guest host era of Monday Night Raw. Folks, I know a lot of you have been excited for this week's edition. Since the dawn of Guest Host Raw, a lot of you have been very excited for me to cover Bob Barker on the show, and we will certainly get to that. The longtime host of The Price is Right, TV and entertainment icon here in America, and he left a big impact and big impression on WWE in his appearance this week. Of course, this is the go-home show before Breaking Point, the first ever, the only ever submission-based pay-per-view in WWE history. And over on the Patreon page, we are very excited for the upcoming live watch-along of Breaking Point 2009. It's happening Sunday, December 28th. It's going to be happening the day before the next episode of Guest Host Raw. So you'll be filled in on everything going on the pay-per-view side of things as a little side quest. It's been a lot of fun doing these the last couple of months with Night of Champions and SummerSlam 09 with the Patreon backers joining in. It's available to all tiers. All you got to do is sign up at patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret at any price level, and you'll have access to the live watch along with me and Mr. Ooh La La Sunday, December 28th. But here we go. It's time for the show to begin. From September 7th, 2009 at the Allstate Arena in Rosemont, Chicago, Illinois. This is a hot historical building. Chicago's a great city for wrestling, but how will they take to this week's guest host? He is an outsider, but he is America's grandpa, let's face it, because how many of us, sat up home sick from school, watching The Price is Right, like a comfort, like a warm blanket covering you, as we welcome Bob Barker to the show. We get the disembodied voice of Howard Finkel playing the role of Rod Roddy on this night, because it's The Price is Raw, and out comes the TV legend Bob Barker. He's got the stick mic and everything, just like he does on his show. Big reception for Barker here. Reading Brian Gewirtz's book, and when he talks about the guest host and he talks about Bob Barker, and there was the fear that this crowd might eat him alive, because it's a live audience. It's not, LA, it's not Burbank. It's not, the studio where Price is Right is. It's not his home base. How will they respond to him? They love him here. It's great. And he goes out there and he says, I wish I had a refrigerator for each and every one of you. And man, you'd think this was Hulk Hogan in 2002, the way they are just cheering their heads off. And he says, you are the folks who've kept me working in television for more than half a century, and I love you for it. If it weren't for you folks, I'd have to go out and get a job, which gets some laughs, but also a little bit of light booing. And I wonder if people were booing like the idea of having to get a job, like, boo, work, that's no fun. Or like booing him because he's like, oh man, like you have to get a job like the rest of us. Screw you, man. But anyway, it's time for a pricing game, and it's time to get some contestants. Howard Finkel, will you get me 4 contestants, please? And so, oh man, it's the come on down part. Everyone loves this. So the camera's panning around, The Price is Right theme is playing and everything. If you manage to watch a replay of this, that is not there. They dub it over with something else. But they're like, Santino Marella, come on down. And then you see Santino barreling down the aisleway from the crowd to get in there. He's got the name tag on his chest and everything. Jillian Hall, come on down. Erwin R. Shyster, come on down. It's IRS. Like, all right, yeah, he's going to be part of this skit too. And then finally, Chris Jericho, come on down. You see contestants row with the podiums and everything. They got the whole setup. But where's Chris Jericho? Suddenly, you see Jericho walking out from the back. He's in full gear. He is oiled up. He's got the name tag taped to his chest. It is so funny, just the visual of that. And also he's got like a big old bunch of stitches above his eye. Like he must have got hit something hard over the weekend. That looked gnarly. So now they're here to bid on the Best of SmackDown 10th Anniversary DVD with Rosa Mendez showing it off and everything. It's very much, this is The Price is Right format here. And so Santino, very starstruck and flustered, very big fan of the show. He wants to buy a vowel. And Bob's like, you want to buy a vowel? There's no Vanna White here. There's no Pat Sajak here. And so Santino ultimately bids $14.65 American style dollars. And then Jillian Hall sings $75. Erwin R. Shyster wants to know if the taxes are included in the purchase or in the bid of this DVD. And Bob's like, there's no time to be thinking about taxes. And IRS is like, oh, it's always a good time to be thinking about taxes. So he's like, $50 with taxes. I'm like, man, y'all are, really taking early DVD prices, like 99 prices for DVDs into account here in 2009. So anyway, Jericho, it's his turn to bid, but he doesn't want to do it. He just gets up and gets in Bob Barker's face. And before he can say anything, Barker's like, your mother would be very disappointed in you right now for the way you're behaving. And like, as somebody who follows Chris Jericho and knows his career, it's like, oh man, you don't be saying trash about his mother, like not his poor mother. And then Jericho's about to say something. And then Bob is like, oh, he speaks, he talks, everyone. Let's give him a moment. And like, I don't know, how if you're Jericho, how do you not break at that? Because it only gets more insane from here. So after Bob does a little bit of riffing, Jericho gets in his face and says, don't call me Chris. You have to call me Mr. Jericho. You need to respect me. You need to pander to me. And Parker has just got no time for this shit. He's like, why should I do that? I'm just respectfully asking for a bid. Well, what do you want me to call you? Why should I do this? And Jericho just says, I'm the best in the world at what I do, and I am one half of the tag team. He goes, one. He said one. I heard one. Let's put that bid down. And that got a big pop for Parker to cut him off. And it's like, oh, here's the dollar bid. And as he tells Jericho, get back to your seat, get back. I'll bend you over my knee and give you a spanking, happy boy. Like, what? What is Barker? He's just firing off all these old man sayings. He's got a few more of them tonight, but he is just, oh man, he is talking in a way that nobody does on this show. When you compare everyone's promo style, it's always the same beats, the same timing. Bob Barker, true professional. He's the ace. He just like fires him off. He has, it's great. It's his charm. He's not necessarily burying anyone, but he's just having some fun, and the fans are loving this. And believe it or not, Jericho's bid is the closest to the actual retail value without going over, so he wins the opening contest. And now it's time for you to get to the ring, Chris, for a chance to win an all expenses paid trip to Hawaii. We cut to the back and we see the Bella twins are in hula gear and they're dancing around this giant Hawaii postcard as Howard Finkel describes the prize and everything. And Jericho's like, all right, hell yeah, I can win a trip to Hawaii. Like, he's getting psyched for this. Like, it's one of the few times you ever really see him smile, during this serious era of Jericho. So Barker's like, all you have to do is beat your opponent, and here he is, MVP. Like, wow, the same guy that Jericho wrestled last week, and then a tag match a week before that, and he beat him clean last week, easily. So I don't know why Jericho seems to be frustrated about that. Like, okay, you just do it again. But is there literally no one else available on this roster that could present a challenge to Jericho? It's gotta be MVP. Before we get to the match though, I do have to say, what an amazing opening segment that was. I mean, Price is Raw has to be one of the best bits of all time. It easily could have tanked if the crowd did not buy into it. Like, they could have easily shat all over that, and it'd be a very different story. But I think, Barker was game, the crowd was into it, they wanted to see WWE do a spin on The Price is Right. And that's exactly what that opening bit was, and I think it was perfect. I just want to know why these guys didn't communicate what gear they were going to wear before the matchup, because now it looks like they're matching. Like, they're also a tag team, apparently. This is good back and forth all throughout this matchup. What a great line going into commercial for Cole, where he says, MVP has a chance to, cancel Jericho's trip to Hawaii and get momentum for the tag title match at Breaking Point. Because, we all know what the real priorities are here. MVP, in the end, he blocks a codebreaker attempt by grabbing onto the rope, and he rolls up Jericho to win. So now they've traded wins. Okay, I think it was another good match between the two, but can't there be a better way to build this tag title match than to just have singles matches, repeat? And again, we are not done focusing on the tag title scene. More on that later, and you'll get what I mean. They show us a recap of the last episode where Dusty Rhodes was the guest host and Orton's betrayal at the end. And so they're plugging a match later on where they say, after the events of last week, John Cena wants to take his frustrations out on Cody Rhodes. But is Cody also frustrated with Randy? Spoiler alert, no, not really. Backstage, we go to the Barker Zone, where we see Kelly and Bob Barker having a very natural-looking conversation in front of a massive display of Barker's new autobiography. And Kelly just turns on, she activates, and she goes, "Bob, I heard the proceeds for this book go to the DJ&T Foundation. What's that about?" And Bob's like, "I'm glad you asked, Kelly. It's named after my mother and my wife, and, it's all about subsidizing the neutering of pets all across the country. So we're just going to plug that in there. We're going to shoehorn the causes here. It's what you got to do. It's the nature of these shows. You got to have a plug. So it's just a very unnatural way of going about it." And speaking of horn dogs, in walk in D-Generation X. And, Triple H being the cool guy, he just walks up and just puts his hand right on Kelly's shoulder because he's a cool guy and chicks dig cool guys. And so they're marking out over Bob Barker, and Triple H is like, "I love the scene in Happy Gilmore where you beat up Adam Sandler, huh?" And then Shawn stops Hunter from quoting it and then asks, "Hey, in regards to spaying and neutering, how does one go about that for, Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase?" And then Barker's great because he knows the lore, like he's all dialed in. He's like, "I know you were going to come to me about this, and I know you'll have your whack at them this Sunday. But for now, why don't you come blow off some steam and spin the wheel?" I love "get your whack at them." It's a great old-timey line, and I want to start using that more. I'm going to say that. I'm going to try and say that more in commentary. It's a great line. So then they go over to like the wheel. It's not like the actual Price is Right wheel. That would have been too cool. Instead, we get the TV monitor and a button. And so if they push the button, that spins the wheel, and Kelly explains, like, "A computerized thing is going to spin and pick your two opponents." Like, she knows intimately what this is. So they had to push the button twice, and they get their opponents drawn. So you've got Shawn pushing the button first. First of all, the wheel has got like a bunch of people on it, like Big Show, Kelly's on it. Triple H and Shawn themselves are on the wheel. So it's like, what would happen if it landed on either of them? So Shawn spins the wheel. It lands on Chris Masters, and they make fun. Triple H makes fun of his hair plugs or whatever. Then he spins the wheel, and it lands on WWE Champion Randy Orton. What in the OVW nonsense is this pairing of Orton and Masters? Talk about a weird way to use either of the guys for this matchup. And the DX are like, "We can make it work." But man, what a natural Kelly is. After the commercial, we get a recap of the Texas Bull Rope match from last week, Chavo and Hornswoggle. I guess we all know where we are in the format and what's coming up next, gang. Sure enough, Chavo's in the ring, awaiting his fate. We see Bob Barker on the Big Bob screen, and he tells Chavo, "If you win your match tonight, you will win this." And we see a new car. Howard Finkel describes this beautiful red Corvette as the Bella twins are inside posing. Chavo wants to win that car, and his opponent is not Hornswoggle, but Evan Bourne. So he's been involved, kind of meddling in the Chavo Hornswoggle business the last couple of weeks. And so we have this one-on-one match here. Lawler brings up that he won a red Corvette himself, by winning a match, which means he booked himself to win a red Corvette. And he has this line where it's like, guys at the gym, they would always try doing pull-ups and, work out to impress the ladies. I did pull-ups. I pulled up in the car with my red Corvette. Like, where? Outside the school? Chavo with a lot of the heat early on, but Evan fights back. They're on the top rope, and he goes for this just huge, like, trampoline jump off the top rope, looking to do like a Hurricane Rana or something. But Chavo gets out of the way, and Evan does a big sit on the top rope, essentially, and does like a flip crash onto the ground. That looked awesome. I've never seen someone get that kind of height, like a 5 or 6 foot jump off the top rope like that. That'd be amazing if he connected with something like that. Chavo hits the Amigos. He's getting ready for the frog splash when Hornswoggle appears. He pops out from under the ring. He's got a super soaker, and he just mildly sprays Chavo with it, and so that distraction gets him down off the top. He's like cornering Hornswoggle when suddenly Evan Bourne with a surprise roll-up, and he wins the match. I'm not sure if he wins the car, but all we know is that Chavo does not win the car here. It was a fine match. It was good to see Chavo in just like a straight up regular match with somebody and you have like competitive matchup with. I do think it's very silly that Evan Bourne needed help from Hornswoggle to beat the guy who has spent the last 3 months losing to Hornswoggle. They show another recap of the main event angle from last week, and it's sponsored by Dissidia Final Fantasy. More like, look at Dissidia Dusty Rhodes for falling for Randy Orton's trickery again. And then we see a bunch of of Chicago White Sox players in the front row, kind of hamming it up. And then we pan over to some ladies. One of them is Summer Rae. And I'm like, whoa, is this like before she got signed? And I had to look it up. And at this point, she is a quarterback for the Chicago Bliss of the Lingerie Football League. So like she's there in attendance as like one of the local players, I guess. And she and some other ladies are there. I'm assuming they're also players. But this is kind of a weird happenstance that we see Summer Rae there like years before she debuts as like Fandango's dance partner.
JCW Lunacy. New episodes every Thursday night at 7 p.m. on YouTube. For over 25 years, JCW has delivered the very best in pro wrestling entertainment, bringing fans deep storytelling drama, gut-busting comedy, and unbelievable in-ring action. From wild characters to unforgettable rivalries, JCW has built a legacy that spans generations of fans. Whether you've been watching since day one or you're brand new to the chaos, there's never been a better time to join the madness. See why JCW is the hottest promotion in independent wrestling today, where anything can happen, and usually does.
Take a look at this!
Don't miss a single moment. Tune in every Thursday night at 7 p.m. on YouTube and catch up on past episodes right now. JCW Lunacy. It's more than wrestling, it's a way of life.
Coming up next, a preview of the WrestleMania 41 main event as John Cena takes on Cody Rhodes. Cody is in the ring first. He's got a microphone in hand, and he says, "I am very much a member of the legacy." Does that mean that I agree with what Randy Orton did to my father? Probably not. And he puts over how, he puts over that Dusty is a great father. I'd like to tell you all that he missed games and birthday parties and all this, but he was actually a very good father. He is a very good father. But my father didn't make me a main eventer. Randy Orton did. And so he wraps up the promo by saying, I made a choice, and after I beat DX this Sunday, I'll know I've made the right choice. There's nothing a father wouldn't do for his son, but there's nothing this son wouldn't do for his career. So I kind of like that explanation, that rationale. Again, they're kind of like burying the whole idea of legacy turning on Randy Orton. He's fallen in line. And, again, it's a storyline that they come back to ever so briefly every now and then to remind you it's there, but it never feels like a consistent kind of vibe. Then Cena comes out and the match begins. The bulk of it takes place after the commercial break. And Cody, he cuts Cena off by tripping him, and he lands face first to the announce table. He gets his heat. And as that's going on, they have this conversation about, oh my gosh, like they're previewing the I Quit match with Cena and Orton for Sunday. And they're like, oh man, I can't imagine either man being able to recover ever again after saying the words I quit. I just hate the fact that, WWE for years made submissions this dirty word. He makes like tapping out and saying I quit like an unforgivable sin for baby faces. That's why you had so many faces like pass out in submissions, because God forbid they actually verbally give up or tap out or anything. There's a big Cena chant brewing as he starts to fight back out of Cody's offense. He goes for the giant top rope sit, but he misses. Cody is really trying hard to make Cena submit in this match to kind of wear him down for Sunday and also build some momentum for himself in the submissions count anywhere match with DX. But Cena just powers out of the figure four attempt, locks on the STF, but before anything can happen, Randy Orton runs in, breaks up the hold, gets the match thrown out. That is how you do a Randy Orton runs in and gets the match DQ'd thing. Not just have him running in, doing nothing, and then the bell rings. So I'm glad they corrected that mistake. Then Cena hits an AA on Cody for good measure after the bell. Orton's on the ramp. They have a stare down, and then Cole says, but who will utter the phrase, I quit, this Sunday? Again, the match itself was fine, but they love, having Orton do run-ins. They love having these, DQ finishes. And that's what we got here. So more questions and answers, and I guess we'll just have to wait until 2025 to get a real definitive answer on who's better between Cena and Cody Rhodes. They announced that next week Batista is coming back and could make a career-altering announcement. But then it's Bob Barker time again. Whoever did the rebroadcast of this to stop messing with the redubbing of the Price is Right theme, because we get it normal style here in this segment. And so it's time for another pricing game. So who's our next contestant? And Howard Finkel announces Chicago White Sox player A.J. Pierzynski, come on down. And he hops the barricade, he's making his way down, gets massive boos. This is confusing to me. I don't understand the nature and the demographics of Chicago sports, because he makes his way down, he's getting booed, and Barker's like, do you all like the Cubs? And that also gets booed, so it's like, what do you want? Also, is it me, or does Pierzynski look a lot like James Ellsworth with that hair and that goatee? If you removed AJ's chin, he would be a dead ringer, I think. But anyway, they're bidding on a gold travel package for WrestleMania 26 in Arizona. And they show you the same 3 clips on a loop as Howard Finkel describes the prize and everything. And so Pierzynski bids $1,000 on it, and then you've got IRS bidding $2,000, Jillian Hall bidding $5,000, which is actually probably closer to 2025 rates than in 2009. And then Santino, it's a bit of a blustery moment here. There seems to be some confusion, but Santino bids $1,200. He wins the bid, and he is pumped. He is ready for this. But yeah, the idea of the gold package costing $1,200 for WrestleMania. Ha 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 ha, what a fantasy that feels like today. So anyway, Santino's in the ring now, and they say, you could win this, and it's a new hot tub. And you've got the Bella twins posing in the hot tub. Something tells me that water is not hot. And they're just sitting in cold water for this shot here. So anyway, Barker says you can win this hot tub if you win this body slam challenge against this man. And it's the Big Show, one half of the tag team champions. And Santino is making kind of a bug-eyed face. I have to say, he must have learned from the best. Kind of reminded me of my reaction to Paul Isadora, one of my first matches. And it's very quick. Santino goes for a slam. He can't do it. Big Show picks him up with ease, slams him, and then we hear the bum, 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 brr, like the sad Price is Right horn. And I popped big for that, because all night in the other ones, I'm like, why don't we get the sad horn? And then we finally get it. And oh man, it hits so perfect, because you can see the Big Show laughs at that. You can hear the audience laugh big for that. And man, what a great moment. And then for the next minute, Bob Barker just derails this whole segment, because he's just like, was that a win? Was that a win? What's going on over there? You can't see what happened? The referee's doing this. He's like, is he waving it off? Is it done? And to the point where they even play the bum, 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 bum. They need to, come on, Bob, get with it. He lost. Finally, the referee has to lift the Big Show's hand to cue to Barker. Okay, it's finally done. Yes, it was a win, but man, that was agony. He just had this total lapse where he just couldn't think of what was going on. It was really weird to see. And so then he's like, okay, so Santino, sorry you couldn't win the hot tub. But Big Show, you get a chance, to win the hot tub now. Evan Bourne couldn't win the car for beating Chavo, but now the prize could transfer to Big Show if you body slam this man. And it's Mark Henry. I'm like, oh my God, can we please stop with these half-baked rematches from the previous week? We just saw this, just like we saw Jericho and MVP. My favorite part is just before it fades to black to go to commercial, you just hear Bob Barker's mic is open and he just goes, it's Mark Henry, fade to black. I thought that was so funny.
You hit me last week. It's Mark Henry.
When we come back from break, we get this promo for Breaking Point, and it's amazing because they pipe in these really awful, hilarious screams into the footage.
A brand new, innovative concept in pay-per-view.
With electrician
Stuff
baby magic of it.
And was matched by another in the music.
But then we have the Body Slam Challenge to start things off. And yes, the hot tub is still on the line here. And the whole match, it's an offensive struggle. It's basically two guys working back and forth to try and body slam each other. And they can't because they're each so big. And so they just will club each other a couple of times to do it. It's a very boring match. Finally, Mark Henry is able to pick up the Big Show and win. He just wins the body slam. Sexual Chocolate has won the hot tub. Sadly, we don't get to see where that leads, and that's basically it. And they say on commentary, I'm beginning to think they may be able to knock the champs off at breaking point, which tells me very vividly they will not. Then we go back to the Barker zone where we see Josh Matthews having a sit-down interview with Bob Barker, and they do some real good production on this one. We're getting tracking shots, tracking zooms and pans and stuff. They're really going all out in a way they don't normally see in sit-down interviews at this time. So Josh is just asking hey, did you ever get beat up on The Price is Right? And Bob Barker's oh, one time, a woman stepped on my broken toe, and, this one person headbutted me in the solar plexus going for a hug, and one woman jumped up a lot right under my jaw, and boy, the dental bill was tremendous. And then Josh Matthews is well, thanks so much, Bob. I hope everyone gets to read your book. And that was it. Wow, that was a minute of time well spent. Again, I get that they want to put this over. And this was something I think that Brian Gewirtz said was originally meant for the internet. We're going to do all the plugging for your book, in internet vignettes and stuff. And Barker fought that. And well, I wish WWE stood their ground on this one, because this was, there you go. Just a nice 1 minute of Bob Barker recounting a few times he got hurt. They let us know that Trish Stratus is hosting next week, the Monday after Breaking Point, and then we see Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler in the ring breaking down the card where every main event match must end in a submission. And then we go back to the Barker zone, and we see Bob just sitting there reading his book, and he goes, "My book gets better every time I read it." What a great line. So then Chavo, he walks in now, and he's wearing a really cool graphic tee of himself. I've never seen that one for sale, but I thought it looked really sweet. Anyway, Chavo's complaining that, hey, Evan Bourne cheated. I'm not leaving until I get that car. And Barker's hey, you win some, you lose some, it happens. And, Chavo's getting more upset. And he goes, wait a minute, didn't you train in karate with Chuck Norris? Does that make you think you're better than me? You don't get in my way. And then Barker just goes, Chavo, in any big fight, the big advantage is surprise. And he hits Chavo in the stomach, and he gives him a karate chop in the back and takes him down. And then he just looks at the camera and goes, I had a wonderful time tonight. Please, folks, always remember to spay and neuter your pets. And then just gives a big smile, and that's where it ends. I thought that was an amazing closing segment there, and really kind of redeemed some of the midpoint stuff that Barker had on this show. But yeah, that was great stuff. I liked it. It would have been better if he just ended it and put the exclamation point by looking right at the camera and go, "The price is raw, bitch." We cut to the back and we see this shot of Randy Orton having a chat with Chris Masters. Again, what a weird pairing this is. And then we go to the main event. It's D-Generation X versus Orton and Masters. But I tell you what, Chicago, Rosemont, they love them some DX. One of the biggest pops of the whole show is for their entrance. And, Triple H does his opening speech for the thousands, for the millions. And he goes, and for Cody and Ted, because they are a great team. They're great partners. They're like Siegfried and Roy, and you're looking at the two white tigers hanging off your jugulars. Damn, too soon and homophobic. So the match begins, and I just keep going, what an odd time and a place to put Chris Masters in a main event match like this. It really comes out of nowhere. And, they say on commentary, boy, he's really been impressive since coming to Raw. Don't fucking lie. No, he hasn't been. The last time we saw him on TV was 3 weeks ago, cleanly losing to MVP. We come back from break, and it's a lot of Shawn Michaels and Randy Orton. Boy, between that and Survivor Series 05, I've seen a lot of Michaels versus Orton lately. And so anyway, Michaels is taking a lot of heat here. Triple H gets a big hot tag. I love this moment here where Triple H is going boom, boom, boom. Orton wants to sneak in, and Triple H cuts him off, stares him down, scares Orton away. And Masters is sneaking up behind him, but Triple H, still too cool for that. He stops Orton from cheating and is able to turn around to spinebuster Masters. Chris gets Shawn in the Master Lock for a while, but the H-Man breaks it up. Sweet chin music to Masters, and suddenly we see Triple H putting Orton in a sharpshooter in the ropes, while Shawn puts Masters in the figure 4 leg lock, and Chris taps almost immediately, and so DX wins. And again, I ask, why are you putting the WWE champion in a position to lose? No, he didn't take the submission or whatever. but he's still on the losing side. He's still teaming with someone he's never teamed with before. If you want DX to get over, put anyone else in there. You could have had Masters versus literally anyone else. You could have had Masters and Carlito. You could bring them back if you want. There's so many different ways to go about this than to put the motherfucking champion going against John Cena in a match later on. Like, why would you have him do that? But then the rest of the Legacy come in and we get this big brawl where Orton sneaks away and Cody and Ted are fighting with, Shawn and Hunter. They make their way through to the back, and then Legacy managed to escape by jacking someone else's vehicle. I'm like, you're still kind of abandoning Orton here, aren't you? But we see Orton standing in the ring having watched all this, and then he's on the mic and he says, that disappointed look in DX's face, they better get used to it because this Sunday, my guys in Legacy will make DX submit. And then I'm going to go on and, beat John Cena and make him say I quit so I can hold on to this championship. The only thing worth in my life right now. And as he's talking, suddenly we see John Cena making his way out. Again, it's the only time we've seen him all episode. It's pretty crazy here. But he shows up and they start scrapping. Orton catches him with a draping DDT, and then he gets a chair out and he hits this RKO on the open chair onto Cena, really messing him up. And then, stands over Cena and says, this Sunday, you will say, I quit. Like, okay, ends strong with the heel, finally looking strong. Did he have to be in a losing tag match with a random partner against DX for this? No, he did not. Again, there are so many different ways you could have gotten everyone else involved. It would have been a better outcome, and you wouldn't have to sacrifice people who should not be sacrificed the way Orton has been this entire time. And that is going to do it for this week's episode of Raw. As far as the show rating, I give it 2.5 out of 5. Awful show saved by a great guest host. I mean, if you didn't include Bob Barker in this, for a go-home show before a pay-per-view, it's kind of dog shit. Like, why do we have to have all these samey rematches? Why must we rehash the Jericho MVP, Mark Henry Big Show stuff so blatantly, continuing the Chavo Hornswoggle angle? No women's matches, not even any women's segments if you don't count Kelly with Bob Barker and Rosa Mendez and the Bellas being the Barker's beauties for the night. Very odd booking of Randy Orton, like I mentioned. In terms of building a pay-per-view, this one didn't do it for me. However, like I said, Bob Barker saved this show. He gets a 5 out of 5 for me. I mean, again, the opening segment with the pricing game is one of the best things Raw ever did. And, the parts where they plugged the book really got forced in there and did feel like, okay, you're kind of killing the vibe. But again, ending the way it did, ending strong with Bob Barker and Chavo Guerrero was a lot of fun. Great way to put the bow on everything. And I do think that, them turning it into a game show really just dilutes and softens the stakes of everything they do. When it's like, okay, we're already trying to convince people that it's important to win these matches for pride and money and titles and whatnot. But now we're throwing in things like a car and a hot tub and a trip to Hawaii. And it's like, you're just kind of putting hats on top of hats here. What was the best match on the show? None of them were. They were all fairly forgettable, and besides, everyone knows that the opening Price is Raw segment was the best part of the show, bar none. And in fact, I think in the future I might just have the best match, worst match, just be best and worst overall thing, because sometimes it's not a match. But as far as the worst match goes, it's gotta be Big Show and Mark Henry for this one. And now it comes time for the host rankings. And folks, this might get me some flack here, but I am going to rank Bob Barker number 2, just below Freddie Prinze Jr. And this is why, because I think they're both tremendous. I gave them both a 5 out of 5 rating. They both did great. And I think there is something to be said about the fact that how Bob Barker was way more important to that episode being any good than Freddie Prinze Jr. was for his. My big thing with the tiebreaker, though, is the overall quality of show. I think the Bob Barker episode of Raw was not nearly as good as the Freddie Prinze Jr. episode, because that one was a build to SummerSlam. That was the go-home show for that show, and I think that was really solid across the board. This one was really dog shit if not for Bob Barker. And even his stuff I thought was pretty touch and go. Again, I think it was an inverted bell curve with him. This was something I had to wrestle with for a long time. I'm not happy that I made this decision. I think everyone kind of expected Barker to walk away the #1 guy. But you know what? There's going to be some controversies here at Guest Host Raw. And I'm going to fall on the sword for this one. I'm going to stand 10 toes down and I'm going to assert my choice. I'm going with my pick here, Freddie Prinze Jr., a slightly better guest host overall than Bob Barker. But hey, Bob Barker is still one of the best Raws ever had, but what did you think of his involvement in the show? Let me know in the comment section below. Of course, the following episode of Raw, you're going to see it's the fallout from Breaking Point. Trish Stratus is going to be the guest host, but one night before on the Patreon page, December 28th, you'll be able to do a live watch along with me and Mr. Ooh La La for Breaking Point. It will be our companion piece. But until then, folks, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time right here on Guest Host Raw.